Incredible transformation, single dad rancher reveals how he saved a young widow from financial despair. The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple. Pedro, a rugged single dad rancher, stood on his porch, the weight of the world on his shoulders. His heart ached, not just for his own struggles, but for the young widow he heard about in town. Maria, once full of life, was now drowning in bills, her late husband's debts lingering like a dark cloud over her. Pedro felt a pull, an urge to take action. How could he stand by when someone was suffering so close to him? With a simple prayer and a desperate hope, he knew he had to help her even if it meant risking everything he had. Just days later, Pedro found himself at Maria's doorstep. The air was thick with tension, he could sense her fear and despair even before seeing her face. As she opened the door, tears filled her tired eyes. "I can't do this alone," she whispered, her voice trembling, like a leaf caught in a storm. At that moment, the suffering etched in her features struck Pedro deep in his chest. There was no hesitation, he cradled her hand in his grip reassuring. "You're not alone anymore," he declared, his voice steady, echoing promises of hope. Days turned into weeks, and together they worked tirelessly on the ranch. The sight of them laboring under the sun, grappling with each challenge that surfaced, was something the entire town noticed. People whispered admiration, "Did you see how they smile? They're a team." Yet, behind those smiles, uncertainty loomed. Maria was still haunted by a mountain of debt, shadows chasing her every move. But each evening, as they stood together under the stars, sharing laughter and hard-earned stories, hope flickered brighter. It felt like magic awakening between them, a spark that ignited their souls. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But just as things began to shift, tragedy struck. One fateful evening, a storm rolled in, fierce and unforgiving. Maria's old barn, their sanctuary, was a target for the wind's wrath. Pedro's heart raced as he rushed outside, determined to protect what they built. In that split second, as lightning split the sky, he saw Maria, panic etched on her face. In that moment of crisis, everything they worked for seemed to hang in the balance. Would they survive this storm, or would it tear them apart? As thunder rumbled, a question hung in the air: was their fragile spark strong enough to weather the tempest? The answer would shape their lives forever. A tempest bombarded the ranch, rain lashing against the wooden porch like a drum. Pedro's instincts kicked in, driving him toward the barn. The wind howled, drowning out Maria's cries for help as she fought to secure a loose shutter. Lightning flared, illuminating the chaos around them. In that instant, as thunder rattled his bones, he knew they had to work together. "Maria! Over here!" he shouted, waving her to the safety of the barn's entrance. She stumbled forward, drenched, but her eyes glimmered with determination. Together they ducked inside, the storm's howling muted just enough to hear each other's racing hearts. "Pedro, what if it collapses?" Maria's voice wavered as she pulled at her hair, strands drenched and disheveled. Pedro enveloped her shoulders with his strong arms, grounding her amidst the storm. "We'll fight for it," he said, a fierce conviction igniting in his chest. "We can't let this take us down, not when we're so close." As the rain pounded relentlessly against the roof, they worked side by side, securing hay bales and fortifying walls. With each laugh they shared, the tension began to dissolve. Pedro admired Maria's spirit. She was no longer the fragile woman whom he first met. She exuded resilience, a force of nature in her own right. "Look! It's holding!" Maria cheered, her eyes wide with hope as the barn steadied beneath their efforts. Pedro grinned, his heart swelling in his chest as he caught her gaze. He could feel the shift. They were no longer just fighting against a storm, they were fighting for each other, but beyond the barn's walls, the storm raged on, tearing at the land, testing their resolve. Every crack of thunder felt like a shaky reminder of all they had to lose. Life had thrown both of them into the maelstrom of grief and responsibility, but they refused to diminish in the face of adversity. Just as they began to breathe a little easier, the roof above them creaked ominously. Pedro's heart sank as he watched a beam splinter. In that moment, it was as if time froze. Maria's eyes mirrored his fear. "Pedro, what do we stay close?" he shouted, pushing her behind him. He could feel a surge of protectiveness rise within him, stronger than any storm. The barn groaned under the strain, and the air filled with the smell of wet wood. With a loud crack, the beam gave way. Pedro dove, shoving Maria aside just in time, but he felt the weight of the wood slam into his back, bringing him to the ground. Pain shot through him as he struggled to catch his breath. "Pedro!" Maria screamed, rushing to his side. She clutched his arm, her hands trembling. "I'm okay, just give me a minute," he wheezed, grimacing. But deep down, he knew he had to be the one to demonstrate strength, for them both. As she looked at him, her eyes were brimming with tears, but there was also a flicker of something more, a determination that mirrored his own. "We'll get through this," she whispered, squeezing his hand tightly. Outside, the storm began to wane, but the challenges that lay ahead were far from over. The barn had protected them, yet uncertainty still loomed. With every breath, Pedro realized it wasn't just the ranch they were fighting for, it was each other. In that moment, he realized this bond they were forging was now unbreakable, not just for survival, but for a life they could build together. Just as a beam of moonlight broke through the heavy clouds, illuminating their faces, Pedro vowed to not only rebuild the barn but also their lives. And as they stared into each other's eyes, hopes entwined in the wake of destruction, he could only wonder, what did the world have in store for them next? Pedro grunted, trying to push himself up, but the pain radiated through his back in biting waves. He turned to Maria, her face a mix of concern and determination. "Are you hurt?" she asked, her voice shaking. He could see the worry etched in her brow, the way her lips pressed together in a thin line. "I'm fine," he managed, forcing a smile. "Just a little sore. We need to check the roof." He shifted to sit up fully, and she hesitated but nodded, her gaze fierce with resolve. Together, they crawled toward the furthest corner of the barn where the beam had fallen. The roof sagged in that section, as if bowing under the weight of the storm's fury. Tiny droplets of water dripped from the cracked wood overhead, the rhythmic sound a constant reminder of the havoc outside. "Do you think we can fix it?" she asked, running her fingers along the damaged beams. Pedro studied the destruction, the splintered wood and sagging nails whispering tales of what had nearly been lost. "Yeah," he replied, his voice gaining strength. "We just need to gather some supplies. Let us go." Maria's voice was a spark in the dark, igniting his own spirit. Her determination fueled his own fire. They climbed to their feet, cautiously maneuvering through the remnants of hay and debris. Each step was a small victory, a testament to their resilience. They emerged from the barn to find the storm had calmed, the heavy rain reduced to a soft murmur, almost like a gentle lullaby. The aftermath was haunting, fallen branches lay scattered like broken promises. The earth was soaked, the scent of wet soil hanging in the air as fresh as the hope slowly blooming between them. "Look!" Maria pointed to the side of the barn where the sunlight peeked through. There, a glimmer of hope shone, illuminating patches of the ground where weeds had once taken root. "Maybe that's a sign," Pedro said, squinting at the bright patches. If nature could recover, so could they. With determination renewed, they set to work. Pedro fetched tools from the shed while Maria gathered what she could salvage: nails, wood, anything to help rebuild. They moved together in synchrony, the bond between them growing stronger with every task completed. Hours passed as they hammered, lifted, and reinforced. With each swing of the hammer, Pedro felt lighter, as if they were not just mending the barn, but also healing the wounds within. Maria laughed as he fumbled a nail, and his heart soared at the sound. There was something perfect about their shared struggle, something that made this moment theirs. "Do you remember when I said I wasn't cut out for this?" she asked, wiping sweat from her brow. Her smile was brilliant, infectious. "I do," he teased back. "I think this proves you wrong." She chuckled, the melody of it filling the air between them. But then her laughter faded a little as she glanced at the ground, a shadow crossing her face. "I wish it didn't take a storm for us to realize how strong we could be." Pedro stepped closer, his voice low and steady. "Sometimes it takes darkness to show us the light. You're not alone in this, Maria." For a moment, everything felt possible. The barn stood partially rebuilt behind them, but their hearts were stitched together with golden threads of hope. Just as he reached out to squeeze her hand, a distant voice came calling. "Pedro! Maria! Are you all right?" They turned to see Lucas, his younger brother, running toward them, then skidding to a halt. Concern etched on his face, mixed with relief. "I was worried. I heard the storm and then the crashing." "Hey, we're okay," Pedro reassured him. "Just busy making this place better." But as he spoke, an unexpected wave of doubt washed over him. Would they truly be all right? The work ahead felt heavier than what they had just accomplished. Maria's hand slipped into his, grounding him again. "Together," she said softly, her gaze unwavering. Just then, a new sound rumbled in the distance, a low, ominous growl hinting at more trouble on the horizon. Pedro's stomach dropped. This fight was far from over, and he couldn't help but wonder if they could muster the same strength for what was to come. What was brewing beyond the hills? What new challenges awaited them? Lucas's eyes widened as the distant growl vibrated through the air. "What was that?" he asked, his youthful curiosity mingling with fear. Pedro exchanged a worried glance with Maria. "I think it's thunder," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. But deep down, he knew this sound felt different. A sense of urgency pressed on his chest. "Thunder?" Lucas questioned, looking doubtfully at the clear sky. The sun was bright, rays streaming down in a warm embrace. It didn't make sense. "Maybe it's just a passing storm," Maria offered, though her voice lacked conviction. She had grown accustomed to nature's rhythms, but something in her tone betrayed her unease. "Let us get this roof fixed first," Pedro said, forcing a smile for Lucas's sake. "I'll check the other side of the barn after." The three of them worked quickly, their hands moving deftly, but an unspoken tension lingered. Each strike of the hammer felt heavier, drenched in the looming uncertainty. As they labored, Pedro's thoughts drifted to the future. Would they have to face more than just a storm? Suddenly, a sharp bark interrupted their focus. It was Max, the old farm dog, barking from the other side of the barn, eyes wide and searching, a protective instinct ignited. "What's wrong, boy?" Lucas ran to Max, confusion etched on his face. Maria followed, and Pedro, still holding a nail in one hand, felt a chill creeping up his spine. Max darted around the corner, his body tense. "Something's out there," Maria said, her voice almost a whisper. Pedro joined them, heart pounding. From behind the barn, a shadow moved, crouched low and creeping through the underbrush. Instinctively, he stepped forward. "Stay back!" he shouted, the world narrowing around the unknown. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a wild boar, snorting and stomping its feet, clearly agitated from the storm. It stood a few feet away, eyes glistening with a wild fury. Pedro recognized the danger. It wasn't just any boar, it was a large one, a breeding male. "Get back, Maria!" Pedro yelled as the boar turned its attention toward them. The animal's growls had shifted from a distant echo to a tangible threat. Fear flashed in Maria's eyes, but she didn't move. "Pedro, It's just scared. We need to calm it down. Calm it down. He shook his head. It's a wild animal. We can't take chances. Lucas was frozen, standing behind Maria, clutching Max's collar, who had now lowered his head, sensing the escalating tension. With every second feeling like a lifetime, Pedro's heart raced. This was their home, their sanctuary. How could nature's fury turn so quickly against them? He took a deep breath, steeling himself as he picked up a nearby tool, a heavy piece of wood, ready to defend his family, but as he swung his gaze back to the boar, something changed. The animal's stance shifted from aggressive to uncertain. It sniffed the air, its gaze flickering between them. Pedro, wait. Maria urged. Maybe we can distract it. If we can. Before she could finish, a deep growl rumbled again from the distance. The boar turned abruptly, startled, and darted back into the thick brush, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Silence descended around them, thick and heavy. What just happened? Lucas finally broke the stillness, confusion still painted on his young face. Pedro's heart raced with adrenaline. I don't know, but we need to stay alert. This storm wasn't just rain, it's awakened something else. Maria's grip on his hand tightened, her presence grounding him amid the chaos. They made their way back to the barn, but the weight of new threats hung in the air. Feeling a sense of unease creep back, Pedro glanced at the hills, where thick clouds gathered again like an ominous shroud. Would there be more animals drawn to their land? More struggles to face? They finished securing the roof, but an undercurrent of tension remained, even as the sun shone brightly. As they stepped back, Pedro felt something else, a flicker of determination sparking within him. No matter the challenges to come, he wouldn't let fear rule their lives. He wouldn't let this land slip away, but beneath that determination loomed a shadow of doubt. Could they fight against more than just nature? As he finally stepped away from the barn, a low rumble echoed again, and Pedro stood, holding his breath, knowing that they were not alone in this fight. What else lay in wait beyond the hill? What shadows were lurking, ready to confront them? Pedro stood at the edge of the barn, listening. The rumble echoed in his chest, vibrating through the very bones of the earth beneath him. Lucas clung to Maria's side, wide-eyed and trembling, the innocence of childhood clashing violently with the harshness of their reality. Should we go inside? Lucas whispered, his small voice barely breaking the surface of the tense atmosphere. Not yet, Pedro replied, more adamant than he felt. We need to see what this is all about. Maria nodded, her hand still tightly gripping Pedro's. The fear in her eyes reflected his own. They were both aware that the unknown was often more frightening than the dangers they could see. Pedro turned, eyeing the horizon, where the thick clouds loomed ominously. He felt an urge to protect his family, a primal instinct flaring up within him. Stay close. If anything comes charging at us, we stick together. With that, he stepped forward, his boots crunching against the gravel. The distance to the hills felt more daunting than ever. Each step was measured, every sound amplified. The sun was still shining brightly overhead, yet the shadows of something sinister were creeping steadily closer. Look, Lucas pointed, breaking the heavy silence. What's that? Pedro followed his son's wide gesture. On the edge of the field, just beyond the trees, something large loomed. His heart dropped. It was another animal, blending into the landscape yet distinctly out of place. A large deer stood, its eyes locked onto them, wild and frantic. It seemed to understand the danger in the air. What's wrong with it? Maria asked, stepping closer. Pedro felt his breath catch. I don't know, but it feels like it knows. It wasn't just tamed animals that were changing, it felt like nature was shifting in response to some unseen disturbance. Pedro's instincts told him the forest was now a dangerous realm, one that could unleash more than just the typical storms of the season. They watched as the deer suddenly bolted, racing away from something that couldn't be seen. The panic in its movement sparked something primal in Pedro. Let us get back inside. Maria said, her voice tinged with urgency. As they hurried back to the barn, the ground trembled beneath them. Pedro looked over his shoulder, fear gripping his throat. Was it just his imagination, or was there a growl beneath the sigh of the wind? Once inside, they locked the door behind them. The barn smelled of fresh hay mixed with wood and sweat, comforting yet now suffocating. Is it safe? Lucas asked, his voice trembling as he looked to Pedro. We'll find out, buddy, Pedro promised, though his heart didn't quite believe it. They gathered by the window, peeking out toward the hills. But as they watched, the shadows began to shift more violently. An unsettling sense of dread washed over him, and in that moment, the vibrant sun felt like an illusion. Pedro, Maria whispered, drawing them all closer. What if it's not just wild animals? What if there is something more? Pedro gripped the edge of the window, his mind racing with all the horror stories he had grown up hearing. I won't let anything hurt you. It can't get past us. We're strong together. But even as he said the words, doubt wormed into his heart. An uneasy quiet hung in the air, broken only by the distant sound, once more a low rumble, now closer and charged with raw energy. As shadows danced menacingly across the walls, Pedro felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just a storm brewing, it was a promise of something waiting to emerge. What kind of fear was stalking them this time? And what would they face when the shadows finally decided to reveal themselves? The rumble grew louder, a low growl that resonated through the barn, shaking the very walls. Pedro's heart raced. There was something unnatural outside, something that slithered in the shadows. Lucas squeezed Maria's hand tighter, his small fingers trembling, and Maria's eyes reflected a fear transparency, making Pedro's heart ache for their safety. What if it's the storm? Lucas whispered, desperately clinging to a fragile hope. A storm wouldn't act like this, Maria replied, her voice wavering. It feels alive. Pedro could feel the warmth of their bodies pressed together, a living shield against the unknown. It steadied him for a moment, grounding him. Listen, we need to think. What's the safest place in here? Back in the barn's storage, Maria suggested. We can block ourselves in there. They moved quickly, each step amplified by the creeping sense of dread. The storage room was small, usually filled with old tools and forgotten memories. Pedro pushed aside items to make a space for them. We'll stay here until we know it's safe, okay? Lucas nodded, but his eyes darted back to the window. Pedro didn't want to look. Yet, he couldn't help himself. He glanced out. The sunlight was gone, masked by a thick, swirling mist that swallowed up everything. In the distance, shadows moved, twisting and turning. They were no longer just falling leaves, they were violent, chaotic shapes, lurking menacingly in a place where danger knew no bounds. Pedro? Maria's voice sliced through the silence. What do we do if it comes in here? His throat felt dry, the answer dancing just out of reach. We wait. We are stronger together, we can't be afraid. But even he could hear the tremor in his own voice. How could he reassure them when he himself felt like the ground was slipping beneath him? Then came a heavy thud, like thunder, but more raw, more animalistic. They exchanged panicked glances, the realization dawning on them that it was close, too close. Lucas pressed against Maria, his little body trembling as if trying to disappear into her. What is it, Dad? Lucas's voice barely formed the words, small and fearful. Pedro took a deep breath, conjuring every ounce of bravado he could muster. I don't know yet, but we'll face it together. Just stay quiet. The next moment, the door rattled fiercely, sending icy dread through Pedro's veins. He felt the urge to grab a tool, a makeshift weapon, but he knew there was little the barn could do against unknown terror. Instead, he wrapped his arms tightly around his family, drawing them as close as he could. Suddenly, the energy in the barn shifted again, thickening the air, wrapping around them like a predator watching its prey. A guttural growl surged through the walls, sending vibrations that echoed deep into their bones. Pedro. Maria's eyes, wide and locked onto him, begged for strength. What if it is a beast? What if it won't stop? He breathed deeply, feeling his heartbeat race like wild horses. We face it. Together. As if to punctuate his words, the door splintered under the stress of something immense pressing against it. Pedro tightened his grip. Hold on. He shouted, bracing for impact, but just then, another low rumble erupted, this time not of the ground, but of something soaring above. Pedro's eyes darted upwards. The very roof of the barn trembled with the weight of whatever was coming. Fear clutched at him. Were they about to face a storm of beasts or something worse? Tension layered like thick fog around them, plunging into an unfamiliar silence that held a promise of change. What exactly was stalking them in the darkness, and could they protect each other from the storm that was about to break? The wind howled outside, crashing against the barn like a beast trying to break in. Pedro's pulse quickened. What was happening? They were safe inside, but safety felt like a thin veil against the chaos outside. He couldn't shake the gut feeling that something was brewing beyond the mist, a reckoning he couldn't comprehend. Look closer, Lucas whispered, peering out into the swirling fog. I think I saw something. Stay back. Pedro barked, instinctively pulling Lucas and Maria closer. They huddled together, breaths quickening as the shadows danced just beyond their sight. What if it's the wind? Or some wild animal? Maria's voice was low, more of a plea than a statement. Pedro squeezed her hand, willing strength into her. Whatever it is, we have each other. That's what matters. But inside, doubt clawed at him. They could hear the rustling now, the mocking shuffle of something lurking just beyond the door. A chorus of cracking would rewarded their silence. Pedro held his breath. Do you think it could be a storm? Lucas's eyes shone, a flicker of belief in the absurdity of their situation. Maria shook her head. No storm moves like this. We need to. Before she could finish, a loud bang erupted, the door shuddering violently as if something immense wanted to come in. Pedro lunged forward, bracing himself against the door, heart racing like a runaway train. Something's trying to break in. He shouted, the urgency igniting an adrenaline rush. He felt the weight of his job, of being their protector, but doubt was a vicious serpent in his mind. What if he failed them? What if he couldn't stop this creature? The shuddering intensified, a low growl vibrating through his bones. The door rattled again, sending ripples of panic surging through Maria, and Pedro felt her grip tighten on his shoulder. Pedro, she whispered, her voice trembling. I know, he answered, his throat thick with anger mixed with fear. We need to secure the doors more. Move the tools to block it. They hastily ripped through the barn, searching for anything to fortify the door. Pedro could feel the walls closing in, the noise outside increasing in volume, like the pounding of drums heralding disaster. Every second stretched like an eternity. Faster. He urged them. Lucas, despite his small stature, pushed a wooden crate into position. Maria grabbed a heavy shovel, ready to swing it if needed. Time felt frozen as they fortified their makeshift barricade. Pedro glanced at Lucas, his son's face was pale, eyes wide, but in that moment, there was an undeniable spark willpower that reminded Pedro of his own resolve. Listen to me, Pedro urged them, forcing his voice to be steady. Whatever comes, we don't let go of each other. We fight together. Suddenly, the growl evolved into an ear-splitting roar, almost human in its rage, clawing its way deep into Pedro's heart. His throat tightened. Pedro, it's coming. Maria cried, terror spilling from her eyes. He whipped around to the window. The mist parted, revealing a hulking figure. It was not just a creature, it resembled something ancient, a shadow formed from memories long buried. Hold on. He shouted, grounding himself against the pull of fear, feeling their bodies shake with adrenaline. As the roof creaked ominously above, something primal awoke inside Pedro. They were a family, he would protect them against all odds, but then a sudden flash of light blinded them from the outside world, piercing the gloom. Time stood still, and in that instant, a profound question gripped Pedro. What had they unleashed, and what if the real danger was not just outside but lurking within them? The moment hung suspended, threatening to shatter into chaos. O brilho intenso invadio o espaço, ofuscando tudo por momento cruel e surreal. Pedro podia sentir sua visão sendo consumida, sua mente tentando processar o que estava acontecendo. O rugido do exterior desapareceu, como se o mundo tivesse se distorcido ao redor deles, e tudo que restava era aquele raio ofuscante que preenchia o ar como uma energia vibrante. Pedro. O que é isso? Maria gritou, sua voz cortante como vidro. Ele não conseguia responder. A luz pulsava ondas, e meio a confuso, uma sombra se projetou, tomando forma humana. Uma figura, inicialmente indistinta, cômico a ganhar profundidade, revelando traços familiares, mas perturbadores. Vocês não devem estar aqui, a criatura murmurou, sua voz ecoando como lamento distante e triste. Pedro sentiu calafrio percorrer sua espinha. O que você quer? Ele forçou a voz a não tremer, a proteger sua família. A figura hesitou. Olhos que brilhavam como estrelas perdidas observavam Pedro, Lucas e Maria com uma mistura de dor e anseio. O que você despertou é mais do que você imagina. A escuridão que busca entrar neo é a única coisa a temer. A luz também pode ferir. Luz. Lucas perguntou, seus olhos arregalados alhavam fixamente, entre o medo e a curiosidade. Pedro se virou, buscando os olhos da esposa. No entanto, busca de conforto, ele encontrou abismo de insegurança na expressão de Maria. Ele se sentia perdido, mesmo se cercado pelo instinto de proteção, enteo, como uma determinação que pulsava suas veias. Pedro aponta para a figura. Estamos juntos. Não vamos dizer que nada nos separa. Você pode nos ajudar? A sombra hesitou, tal humano seus tremores. Nem toda luz é verdadeira. Vocês devem estar preparados para o que está por vir. Os ventos que sopram lá fora são apenas o início. Tremendo estrondo eco, a porta bateu com tanta força que as ferramentas que haviam colocado como barricada estremeceram. O ambiente dentro da cabana tornou-se ainda mais claustrofóbico, o pavor começando a se transformar peso esmagador sobre os ombros de Pedro. Fique perto de mim. Ele gritou, sentindo o desejo ardente de proteger aqueles que amava. Mas a certeza colidia com a incerteza, e os olhos de Maria e Lucas, refletindo uma imagem de preocupação, eram lembrete constante de sua fragilidade. Precisamos Maria cômico, mas a luz pareceu tremular, respondendo a sua vontade. Vocês precisam estar prontos para enfrentar seus próprios medos, a figura continua, a intensidade de sua presença se intensificando. A batalha será tanto interna quanto externa. Pedro franziu a testa, as emoções borbolhavam, mas ele não podia se dar ao luxo de hesitar. Nos não temos medo. Venha o que vir, estamos juntos. Nós somos mais fortes assim. A luz cômica se dissipar lentamente, e com ela a forma de sombra, mas não antes de cessar uma última advertência, a verdade não é sempre o que parece. Prepara-me-se para o que a noite trará. As paredes do barricado pareciam vibrar na sardina, e o rugido do lado de fora retoma força, como se respondendo à advertência. Pedro travou o olhar no que restava da figura, asino de despedida ou aviso. Pedro Maria murmurou, a voz tremula. O que fazemos agora? O que realmente está vindo? E lá, no cerne do desconforto e da incerteza, Pedro sentiu a preseo msu coração. O desafio neo era so externo. A verdadeira luta estava prestes a começar, e ele precisava entender o que exatamente essa batalha significava para todos eles. Ele olhou para os rostos de Maria e Lucas, a determinação ardendo dentro dele, percorrendo seu corpo como fogo. Agora, nos seguimos enfrenta juntos. Mas, quando a porta tremia novamente, algo dentro de Pedro se constrangiu. O que mais estavam prestes a descobrir? A porta continua a tremer, batendo com ritmo frenético que ecoava no peito de Pedro, que aos poucos sentia a adrenalina subir. A luz que antes ofuscava agora se esvia, revelando os contornos do pequeno abrigo que estavam. A cabana, antes refugio seguro, parecia agora uma armadilha, pressionando os com sua fragilidade. O que você acha que está lá fora? Lucas perguntou, a voz quase sussurrou, como se qualquer barulho pudesse invocar aquilo que os aguardava. Os olhos fixos no pai transpareciam uma mistura de medo e expectativa. Pedro respirou fundo, tentando reunir palavras que transmitissem segurança. Não sabemos ainda, mas temos ao outro. Isso é o que importa. Ele olhou para Maria, seu olhar procurando encorá-la. A confiança que sempre buscara sua esposa agora parecia distante, como se o medo pudesse apagá-la, quando a luz desapareceu, aquela criatura o que ela quis dizer. Maria murmurou, balançando a cabeça como se tentasse limpar os pensamentos confusos. Não sei, Pedro disse, a frustração borbolhando. Mas foi como se ela estivesse nos alertando a verdadeira batalha está dentro de nós. O eco da voz da figura ressoava sua mente. O que teremos de enfrentar? Medos, desilusões, traumas, grito estridente corto oar, vindo do lado de fora, como lamento de uma alma perdida. Pedro avançou passo, seu coração acelerando. Devemos nos preparar. Se as sombras querem entrar, entao o que temos que fazer e nos posicionar. Maria e Lucas assentaram, o olhar deles agora refletindo uma determinação que começava a florescer. Com mãos trêmulas, Pedro ajudou a reforçar a barricada na porta. Ele sentiu o peso das expectativas, mas havia algo mais ali, uma centelha de esperança que não podia ser apagada. A unidade da família, a força que emergia enquanto trabalhavam juntos para proteger ao outro tamborilar na porta e uma batida mais forte reverberava através da cabana. Pouco a pouco, a atmosfera densa se tornava insuportável. Uma sombra se movia entre os troncos das árvores, quase como se a própria floresta estivesse reagindo ao que se aproximava. Pedro franziu a testa, intuico lhe dizia que o momento de agir estava perto, aspecto primal e ancestral dentro dele gritando por protegeo. Pedro, escute, Maria cômico, sua voz firme. Precisamos escolher. Permanecer aqui ou enfrentar juntos o que vem. O que você decide? Ele olhou para sua família, o amor pulsando no coração, fundido com a determinação. Nos enfrentamos. Juntos. Grito ressoou de novo, mais perto, como se o mundo estivesse prestes a desabar sobre eles. Atenção estacava o ar como arco pronto para disparar. Estão prontos? Pedro perguntou, sentindo o coração pulsar passado no peito. Prontos, responderam juntos, com uma força que surpreende eight mesmo a ele, assim, enquanto a porta a forças desconhecidas e amiacadoras, novo caminho se desenhava diante deles, caminho repleto de desafios, medos a serem enfrentados e verdades a serem reveladas. Era uma batalha que prometia transformar neo apenas o que estava por fora, mas também tudo que estava por dentro, antes que a porta pudesse se abrir por completo, uma silhueta toma forma, desafiadora e imponente. O que você está disposto a sacrificar para proteger os que ama? A pergunta é profundo, como chamado a aqueo, Pedro, sentindo a tensão aumentar, tinha certeza de que o que aconteceria a seguir mudaria tudo. E ao alheram uns para os outros, a pergunta flutu no ar, como precipício prestes a ser cruzado. Estariam prontos para encarar a verdade? A porta se abriu com estrando, revelando uma figura colossal. As sombras dancavam ao redor dela, fazendo com que aquela presença parecesse ainda mais imponente. Uma luz tenue se filtrava através da neblina, iluminando os rostos de Pedro, Maria e Lucas, refletindo a determinação e medo palpável. Quem é você? Pedro perguntou, sua voz ressoando com a coragem que lhe restava. Eu sou o que a tempestade despertou, a silhueta respondeu, sua voz profunda e quase mística, ecoando nos recantos de mente de Pedro. Sou guardião das verdades que vocês negam, e estou aqui para confrontá-los. Os olhos da criatura brilharam como a luz de uma estrela, e Pedro sentiu frio na espinha. O que ele negava? A dor. O medo de perder tudo novamente. Maria apertou suas mãos, como se suas esperanças estivessem anexadas à força dele. Ele respirou fundo, sabendo que aquele momento era decisivo. Estamos prontos para enfrentar o que quer que seja, ele declara, sua voz ressoando não apenas no abrigo, mas ecoando através das vastas planícies. A figura inclinou a cabeça, gesto de respeito. Então, prepara-me-se. A luta que vira não é apenas contra o que está do lado de fora, mas contra os demônios que habitam seu interior. Esta é a verdadeira tempestade. Pedro sentiu uma onda de desafio. Ele olhou para Lucas, que ainda segurava firme a mão de Maria. Nós somos uma família, ele diz, buscando força no olhar do filho. Ninguém vai nos separar. E assim, a batalha começou. A tempestade externa rugia, mas era a tempestade interna que ameaçava esmagá-los. Sombras passaram a se manifestar na mente de cada medos de perda, arrependimentos do passado e cicatrizes que nunca cerrarão. Pedro viu flashes de seus desafios anteriores, momentos de dúvida que quase o destruirão. Maria lutava contra o desespero que a consumia desde a perda do marido. Lucas, o pequeno guerreiro, encarava seus próprios medos de não ser suficiente. Não. Pedro gritou, como se quisesse explodir a dor que os pressionava sob as sombras. Não vamos querer de novo. E naquele grito, algo mudou. As sombras começaram a se dissipar, não por desespero, mas pela força coletiva que emanava deles. Pedro sentia o calor de coragem crescendo, alimentado pela união. Ele olhou nos olhos de Maria e Lucas, e viu ali algo que não estava presente antes, fé. Fé no outro, fé na recuperação, fé na vida. Não deixaremos que a dor defina nosso futuro Maria comico, sua voz neste momento tão firme que fez ecoar como tambor. Cada lágrima se tornara uma semente de esperança. E Lucas, erguendo a cabeça, acrescentou, nós seremos mais fortes juntos. Sempre. As sombras começaram a se retrair, neo porque tinham medo, mas porque a força do amor e a resiliência cresciam a cada palavras. Pedro percebeu que a luz dentro deles tinha começado a ofuscar mesmo a escuridão mais intensa lá fora, noticias rumorivam como a ressurreição de novo amanhecer. O sol começou a aparecer no horizonte, poderoso, como se estivesse renascendo junto com eles, iluminando o que antes estava perdido. Vocês não vão conseguir acabar com isso, a figura murmurou, mas a dúvida agora tremia na sua voz. A verdadeira batalha chegou, mas a luz dentro de vocês é uma força irreprimível. A luz somos nós. Pedro declara último golpe de poder. E então, number flash, a figura se dissipou, e com ela, os últimos resquícios de medo que tenavam domina suas vidas. Pedro, Maria e Lucas estavam de pé, juntos, a luz de manhã os envolvia como cobertor quente da tempestade que havia se instalado suas almas não era a única que causaria estragos. Estavam prontos para reconstruir, não apenas abrigo, mas refúgio de amor, força e esperança da liga que se reforçou entre eles, formada por experiências e emoções vividas e superadas. Alhando para o outro, Pedro sentiu a certeza, não importava o que viesse, juntos, sempre juntos, eles poderiam enfrentar qualquer tempestade da vida era feita de altos e baixos, mas a luz que carregavam seus caracos era a verdadeira protegeu. Juntos, estavam prontos para enfrentar o que quer que o futuro trouxesse e agora, você precisa agir. Subscreva imediatamente este canal para não perder histórias exclusivas como essa. Deixe o seu like agora para alimentar nosso algoritmo e espalhar essa mensagem. Comente suas ricos e sentimentos sobre esse final super impactante. E não espere nem segundo a mês para compartilhar este video com pelo menos 5 amigos que precisam ver essa transformação. Sua participação faz toda a diferença.